Now we're back on Colorbond roof replacements, and there's this little detail about Colorbond roofs that a lot of people miss, and it is not well broadcasted by anybody. Now if I were to ask you this question, say if you spend 2 to 3% more on your roofing job and you get a 30% increase in its performance, would you take it up? And not a lot of roofers will ask you this question. Now, Mason came back to the office the other day and he had just come back from a job and he said, I had to reject this delivery of roofing material. And I said, how come? And he said, they delivered 0.42. And straight away I knew what he meant. But I doubt if anyone else catches on what the 0.42 means, because it's a little detail but means quite a lot. Now, what Mason meant was that the supplier had delivered us with roofing material that was 0.42 BMT. That's the thickness of the roofing material. And our default roofing material thickness is 0.48. We moved away from 0.42 many years ago, and now our default is 0.48 BMT. And that's the reason why Mason looked at the delivery and he said, that's not what I want, that's not what I ordered, send it back and give us what we ordered. Not 0.42, but 0.48. Now, if you were a roofer on the job, the material has been delivered and you're ready to put the roof on. And you would proceed to do your work, and no one really knows what actually arrived and what was installed. Because it's really difficult to tell by looking at the roofing material whether you are getting the thinner 0.42 BMT or the thicker 0.48. And you would think that BlueScope, when they produce their Colorbond coil, would have a means of identifying the thickness of the material. But it doesn't look like it, because if you flip the sheet over on the underside, there's indeed a BlueScope stamp on the back, which says BlueScope and all the other things, but there's nothing in there that tells us the thickness of the material. So one question that may arise is, in the factory, how can they tell which thickness material they're actually working with? Well, I'm not going to try to answer that. We might look at that a bit later on. But let's assume that in the factory they've got some sort of quality assurance program going on, and they know which coil is how thick, so that when the order comes in, they're using the correct coil. Because we can't tell by looking at the material. So the question is, how could Mason tell? Well, he's tried to tell me that he can tell by lifting the sheets up, whether it's the thinner material or the heavier material. But I think I'm not going to be able to tell, so how can he tell? So I said to him, Mace, how do you know it's 0.42? He said, it's easy. It's on the delivery docket. It says 0.42. And straight away I knew they were delivering the wrong material. So that's the reason why I rejected the delivery. Well, I said to Mason, it's going to cost somebody a lot of money, because the delivery was about $6,000 or $7,000. It's going to cost us in wasted time, and it's going to cost the supplier in taking the material back and resupplying with the correct thickness material. So one scenario is, apart from the delivery docket, no one really knows what's actually been delivered. So our roofers could very well go, right, the materials are here, unpack it, put it on the roof, and get the job finished, and no one will know any better. And it'll save a lot of money all the way around. Now, Mason decided against this option because he knows that the little detail makes a huge difference. Because historically, we've always used 0.42 on our residential roofs. And why the 0.42 thinner material? Because there's no difference in the warranty and in the lifespan between the two materials. They're all guaranteed by BlueScope to last a certain lifespan. And obviously, it is the cheaper material. So we used to use 0.42 until we discovered that we'd all been fooled. Because we kept getting into problems with this roof replacement we are doing. There were two things. One, either when we were laying the roof, one of our roofers would accidentally step on the wrong place. He'll crush a rib, and one of the roof sheets will be damaged. and we can't have a new roof with a damaged sheet. So what we had to do was reorder that sheet and come back later to pull the damaged sheet out and replace it. And then we had the instances where after we'd done the job, everything looks perfect. And in a year or so, the owner brings us back and say, listen, the roof's been damaged. And we'll go, listen, who's been on your roof? Have you had it cleaned? They said, yeah, we've had people come and clean the gutters, and we've had guys put an air conditioning system up on the roof, and now we've noticed that the roof's been damaged. So the 0.42 just wasn't suitable for any heavy foot traffic. So from a serviceability point of view, that was a big shortcoming. So we decided we're not going to use the thinner material anymore, we're going to go for 0.48. And the next question was, how much more is it going to cost us? And when we looked at it in detail, we actually discovered that it wasn't going to cost us anything at all. It was going to give us a better product. And these are the numbers that we're looking at. The difference between the 0.42 and the 0.48 is only about 14%. So there's a 14% increase in the thickness. So perhaps about a 14% increase in the weight of the material. So for a 14% increase, we get up to about a 35% increase in the strength. Now that's a good return on investment, a 14% increase in the thickness to get a 35% increase in the strength. Then we looked at pricing. Now the price difference between the 0.42 and the 0.48 is roughly about 6 or 7%. Now that's a good measure. A 6 to 7% increase in the price of the product can give you up to a 35% increase in its strength. Now that's a better return on investment, isn't it? So it was for us a no-brainer. We switched to 0.48 straight away and we said, you don't pay a lot and you get a lot back. So what was the final figure that we arrived at? Well, when you look at a job, the material cost is about 30%. So by bumping the roofing material up to 0.48, we are perhaps looking at about a 2% increase in the overall price of any job. So imagine something tiny like a 2% increase in the price of a job can earn you a 30 to 40% increase in its performance. And that's why Mason rejected the delivery and he said, I want 0.48 because I know that the 0.48 will give us a much superior product. Because guess what? If he had decided to put the 0.42 on, chances are that someone is going to damage 1 or 2 roof sheets. And we would have to come back and replace those sheets anyway, which is going to cost us more, and it's not what we promised to the homeowner. So for the homeowner who wants to replace their roof with a Colorbond roof, there's 2 things that you have to ask yourself. One, is there an advantage in paying 2% more for the job and get a 30 to 40% increase in the performance? And 2, if you decide to go for the 0.48, how do you know that what the roofer is putting on is in fact the 0.48? Because you can't just look at the material that arrives because there's no markings on the material that says it's 0.48. The only documentation is the delivery docket. And a homeowner doesn't look at the delivery docket all the time. So for the homeowner, I think it's quite essential that he says, listen, can I have a look at the delivery docket to make sure that it's the correct material that I'm getting? Because even though you're not paying that much more, the ultimate difference in the performance of your roof makes for a huge difference. So pay 2% more for a 30 to 40% improvement in the serviceability of a roof. That is the little detail that every homeowner should look at when they're thinking of replacing their roof with a new Colorbond roof.